great to have you. And I'm so excited. As you can see from my little cafe here, we're just having an informal discussion about some of these incredible concepts of the future of work. So my first question, Natasha, you've had an unreal career. You've been able to see and be on the forefront of all these different things. What are the biggest differences that you've seen in leadership, and how has that evolved over your career?
I'm first of all in awe of you again, highly accomplished, and I feel I should be really privileged and honored to be sharing the stage with you, but thank you for that. So leadership for me, and again, if I start with a little story of my life, right? My first job, I must have been all of 22, and I was working in the hospitality industry. And of course, now it sounds really nice and, say, oh, that was the arrogance of youth. I remember working 9 months at the hospitality hotel and getting very upset because I had a bad day. And I walked up to my manager and said, I don't really need to work. My father can look after me. In hindsight, I can look back and, be nostalgic and say, oh, wow, that took guts or courage. It didn't. It was just being absolutely short-sighted, not realizing the importance of commitment, the importance of, sticking through things, the importance of realizing that as an individual, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of what you want and how you're going to get it. It's not to realize that you just say, I don't want to do something because I think I have a lot going for me, or I think I have backing. I think as an individual, you have to stand on your own strength. And I've learned that through the years. I've learned with, amazing managers. I've learned with ecosystems in different companies, with, people around me, that as a leader, first of all, I'm a leader. I'm very clear about it. I don't have to be a people manager to be a leader. I don't have to be anything else other than NATASHA to be a leader. I take the lead to change things. I take the lead to be something that the system requires me to be. And in that whole process, I look at how we as individuals can impact, make a difference, and sometimes also take a step back. So for me, I think the evolution of leadership, first of all, for me, it's extremely important that there has to be a level of authenticity. And I'll use all the words that are being used. There's nothing new about it, right? You need to be authentic. For me, ideally, what you see is what you get. I've had to evolve on that. I've had to kind of, taper that a little bit, because sometimes what you get is not what you should be getting. While we all say, be your authentic self, perfect, but authentic self does not mean you can just go into your manager's cabin and say, damn it, I don't need to work with you. And, my father can afford to look after me, or my husband can afford to look after me. That's not authentic. I think being a leader in today's generation is extremely important, to be authentic, walk the talk. After some time, people do tend to see through you. They do tend to realize there's just no substance. So I think that's extremely important. Relationships, asking for help. As a leader, I have seen so many, and it's always left me in awe of how they come so far and how have they done it. And you assume they're doing it alone. But actually, there's a very solid ecosystem around them. And I think those leaders have realized to use that ecosystem for themselves and to develop their ecosystem. So it's a give and take.
When you started work, think of the leaders you had then. How have they evolved? Even the thought of leadership, the skills that the leaders have, how has that evolved?
But I think, first of all, when I was young and in the workforce, there were no women around us, right? There were absolutely no women. Most of the leadership roles were men. It was very traditional, very boss-subordinate kind of equation, right? So your boss took the decisions, you just went and executed. And there was this whole protocol around asking for permission. There was this whole protocol around being very respectful to the person because he was your boss.
Right.
And you kind of evolved around that. And again, I started my career in the hospitality industry, again, non-brainer, because that's where women went, right? The assumption was women went into hospitality industry because either you were in the front office or you were in housekeeping. Then I went into customer care in a mobility organization. And again, customer care, again, no-brainer, that's where women went. So I did most of the traditional roles unconsciously without realizing that I could do more, because the environment around you didn't give you the options of doing more. The leaders around you didn't want to know how was your day. They just wanted to know whether she could do the job, whether she came in on time, and whether she was respectful. And after she left the office, nobody even knew I existed. So I came into office as just one side of me, but my other facets I was not able to bring to work. And the relationships that I built in my second organization was basically where, again, as women, we all kind of banded together. We kind of realized we had certain strengths, we had certain weaknesses, but you were not supposed to talk about weaknesses, because if you talk about weaknesses, then damn it, you're not a good employee. And there was so much of competition. What I've seen now, and of course this happened, if I'm not mistaken, for me, the evolution, of course, was over 15 years ago, where I started seeing the change, where women now were taking those leadership roles, they were taking those decisions, and they were going in it hammer and tongs. But again, those women were termed as aggressive. They were not women, they were aggressive. And again, you had to kind of, balance that equation. But in the last 10 years, I think there's been a sea of change. Leadership is now who you are. Leadership is what you are. They want to know who are you when you're sitting at home. What are the curse words you use? They want to know, why do you like the color blue instead of the color pink? And I love the fact that now leaders say, especially men, they brazenly say, I love pink. And I say, wow, good for you. So I think the roles have become very gender agnostic from an emotional point of view. People have become more holistic. It's not one-sided. And for me, that's been brilliant, because I have grown with some women who have become senior leaders. And again, it's decisions that they have made. It's consequences that they have learned to handle better and differently. But there's a level of confidence that now you can walk into a room as a woman and be counted for something.
Where do you think the future of work is going? So like, what is important to harness? What do you think is going to be the effect? And then I want to ask that question specifically for women. What do you think the future of work is going to look like for women?
I think the future of work for everybody is going to look at, what do you want to do? And the tools are all available for you to go and do it. There is a level of trust that you have to build. There is a level of emotional intelligence that you have to build. There is a level of integrity. These are three very attributable skills that you're looking at as a person. And I keep on oscillating between, as an individual, don't get hung up on the tag that you're a leader or you're an individual. I think your mind shift has to be that you are a leader irrespective of where you are. Because again, you are leading something, even if it's a call, even if it's a program or an activity. So I think that's a good awareness to have to be around. You are allowed to be who you are, but you have to be that with responsibility and accountability. Any job that you do, how much of it do you want to do? So find your passion for your job. It sounds cliched, but I still get up every morning saying, wow, I love to go to work, because there's so much happening. There's so much to look at. One more piece that I think is extremely important, and I've used this as my mantra continuously, is be positive. There is nothing that cannot be solved. There is no solution that does not have a problem, and there is no problem that does not have a solution. So for example, if I'm looking at a person, why will I look at that person and saying what doesn't work? Why can't I look at that person and say what works? Why do I look at a problem and say it's not going to work? No, let me look at what's going to work in it. So I think your perspective of how you look at life, how you look at work, how you look at your colleagues, how you look at your environment, how you look at your friends, find the best. You will get the best.
And so when we focus on the future of work, so if we think, what is work going to look like, I can see how these attributes would certainly help. And it has been a running theme of emotional intelligence and connection and empathy as being really strong skills to bring forward. What I find interesting about that, when we think of machine learning and AI, okay, then we as humans need to bring our humanness to work. And that's what there's no machine that can replace that. Women actually have more of these skills than men, statistically. Obviously, each individual would be different. In that capacity, what does that mean for the future of work for women if we're saying these are the skills we need, and this is a gender that might have more of these skills?
I think the future of work from an analytical point of view, from machine learning, again, a lot of discussions on it, but please understand machine learning and analytics is coming out to take away the repetitive tasks that we do. It's to take away tasks that don't really excite you, that doesn't require human intervention. I hesitate to put tags on only women being certain characteristics, because I think that's what's guided us for so long, and it's kind of restricted us both as men and women. So while the statistics, absolutely, but I think the statistics are changing. A lot of statistics are kind of old. A lot of statistics are based on my experience, because I'm from a generation that talks about those statistics, right? But if I look at the new generation, 20s or late 20s, they don't even think of it from that point of view. You're right, there are no stats to confirm it, because the workforce is still old school. Yes. So it's like people like me are still around, unfortunately. Today, people like me are not around. You'll find this whole new breed of people coming in who are going to say the stats are completely different. And I think that's the hope that I'm looking for from leadership, is that how do you change that rhetoric? How do you change the perception that people have that men have to be a certain way, women have to be a certain way, youngsters have to be a certain way? You talk about the boomers, you talk about the millennials, you talk about the Z, the X. I mean, it boggles your mind sometimes. But when you actually bring it to work as an individual, most of us, if you now peel away, the world has become so small, even though we are so large. We're realizing commonalities. We've all had decent education. We've all come from semi-decent families. We live in semi-decent areas. We've had more or less the same experiences of, either hearing something that upsets us or, going into situations that make us uncomfortable. How we react to it is what's becoming important. While we all chased education quite strongly, right? Especially the new generation now. Everyone's saying, go and get yourself educated. The more you get educated, the better it is for you. But I'm sorry, there are some hard, cold truths on experience, and those experiences make it more holistic. So for me, while the education is important, I think individuals also have to learn to experience what their education can never give them, because it is to some extent one-dimensional, whereas life is multi-dimensional, so is corporate. Don't rely on just one way of thinking.
When we think of the traditional education setting, there is more emotional intelligence courses coming out. There's more of like this examination, but I have yet to see an empathy course, which has like empathy and compassion have come up over and over, especially during COVID. I say course, but obviously you need to experience it, but there's a level of, can you learn a little bit about yourself? Can you do some self-reflection? Can you kind of dive into that so that you have it when, for example, there's a crisis or a global pandemic, to kind of spur that need for it? So if you were thinking about the future of work within your industries and you were giving advice to somebody coming up, just starting in their career, what would you say are the capabilities or skills that they should be investing in?
Another piece that I also want to cover, which I think has become very important, is failure. Our reaction to failure, our ability to roll with the punches. So for me, from a learning perspective, you can read all the books that you want. You can study and understand a lot of concepts. But till you learn to experience those concepts, it's a little difficult. So for me, struggling with networking, relationships, people struggle with how to react to failure positively and realize that it happens now. Let me get over it. That hesitation that I can't do something when you actually can do something. I'd listened to this conversation that somebody had on personal branding, and I think that's extremely important as a young individual who's getting into the workforce. You have to make an effort to let me know who you are. But how you make that effort is your way of doing it. But lead into conversations, lead into the workforce, lead into discussions, so that you learn when you can afford to make mistakes. Because everyone always looks at you and says, oh, you're so young, you've just started your career, you're very indulgent, like I said. But as you get settled in your career, 10 to 15 years, the expectation is now you should have learned all this. So why have you not put in the effort at that time?
And I think that that's actually a really good point, because most people don't have a 15-year career in the same field. Like the majority of people are bouncing around between different things. And certainly COVID has offered the opportunity to re-educate, reskill, and reevaluate what work is to you and how you're bringing it home. We think about like that life experience and the failures, for example, that often just needs time, right, to actually experience. But I do think that idea of that traditional career track where you're with the same company for a long time, that there is this really progressive development, is becoming more and more rare.
Then the other aspect is risk-taking. But please understand, risk-taking does not mean you cannot change your career. You can change your career. The opportunities that everyone has now is that today you can go into finance, tomorrow you can go into marketing, day after you can go into analytics, right? Because the whole perspective is, as an individual, you can do everything you want. But that doesn't take away from your core. As an analytical, as a marketing person, or as a financial person, who are you still? That has to still remain your foundation.
Like, I think everything you're saying is true. And I think it's developing ourselves as leaders is support entirely. But if we think about the future of work and us heading there, I think a lot of what you said is true now. So what is going to be different looking forward, in what we can hone in on for skills and capabilities, and what can we be doing from any aspect of our career, even end of career, to be thinking about what that future holds? From
a skill set point of view, do I have the opportunity to upskill? Yes. Do I have to get my technical quotient up? Yes. It depends on which career path I'm getting into. To the point that you're talking about behavioral and attributable skills, diversity and inclusion is huge, right? Again, understanding the ecosystem. The world is really becoming smaller. You are getting opportunities to now meet with people that you would never have otherwise thought to meet with. Collaboration is becoming very important. While we are looking at teams, we are also looking very strongly as individual capabilities. If you're getting into the future of work, and if I look at myself in the next 10 years, now where do I think I'm going to be in the next 10 years? I have a very clear path because I know what I want to do. Now, does the ecosystem support that? Maybe not, but I'll make it support it, right? So I will start going and looking at those opportunities that help me to support those particular aspirations that I have. Again, skills, digital awareness. being aware how to understand data, extremely important. You might not be an analytical person, but you have to have a decent understanding of how data works. You have to have a decent understanding of why data works the way it does. Where do I get the data from? What does the data tell me? So that's very important, right? The other piece is technology. And I look at, mechanical brain versus logical brain. My father's generation was very mechanical in their thought process. We are in the middle. My children are going to be very logical in their reactions. So again, be aware of how you think. Why do you think in a particular way? Be more mindful. It becomes important for you to know what you are, where you're going with it, right? So technology becomes important. How you use that technology, again, you have to decide. I'm very, very much for the individual being strong, right? If the individual decides he or she wants to use it, use it. These things all as a combination, Lisa. Maybe I'm not able to articulate it or clarify that the future is what you have an opportunity to make with whatever tools are already available. As an individual, you have to concentrate on some because it talks to you, and you have to then learn some others. Like I look at tasks as, what tasks do you have to do? What are the skills that you need for it? What tasks or opportunities you should do? What are the skills I need for it? And what are the ones I don't want to do, but they talk to me personally? I'll go and find that. There's just so much of data around it, and there's so much of information around it.
I think we're actually at a point, and I'll say 2020 has actually amplified this, is that we can design our work. So we can do a little bit more of picking and choosing those aspects and tasks and looking at and trying to find what are those 2, 3, 4, 8 things you're marrying that make you unique. And then where does that fit within the ecosystem that exists? And because of 2020, because of technology, a lot of companies are saying, who's the best person to do this in the world versus can we draw in locally? Like that idea of taking time to think about and design what you want work to mean for you. So is it working from home continuously? Is it certain tasks? What are those elements that really drive you? That's true now, but I think it's going to be even more true for the generations coming up, is they're going to be able to pick and choose. So as much as that traditional career path might be more and more rare, the fun, interesting part is what career paths can you then make and then you can leverage. I know for me personally, it's something I've been thinking a lot about because, of course, you want to go to work, even though it's in the next room, and really enjoy what you do and find that purpose and that passion. And now it can be with amazing people from all over the world.
Absolutely. When we're looking at roles internally to be fit, right? The first thing is that whatever you're saying from a leadership point of view, talk about what you have done in that leadership capacity. And again, it's also very important for you to say, I have led this project and my contribution to this project was this. So I think authenticity is extremely important. The conviction that you know what you're talking about comes up in an interview. And now job seekers have become smart. I think the other side have become smarter. So it's this kind of give and take, right? Because nobody wants to kind of get people in that don't fit the bill. Talk about what has not worked. And I think that's a red flag. When someone comes to me and says, I've had a perfect career, I've done everything right and everything has worked, then you try to say, okay, no, nobody's life is so perfect. So talk about what doesn't work and how you've reacted to it, how you've overcome it. It's extremely important. Another red flag, while I say talk about yourself very clearly with the I, also talk about how as a leader you are engaging with teams, how much you have mentored people, how much are you involved in coaching people. And mentoring, coaching are extremely important aspects of leadership as an individual or as a people manager, because that just shows that you are willing to grow with people rather than against people.
What I got out of that too is that confidence with humility, and then how have I helped other people up? So how have I led and how have I made sure that I'm leveraging and supporting individuals to come up with me and to go into a direction and work as a team and collaborate? Because for everything we're listening to, from the current state of work to the future of work, so much is about relationships. We've always known that. I think it's just highlighted because we are having to develop them in a different way, which is on the computer versus being able to meet people or to network. So I think that those are incredibly important. When I interview people, I often push them on their failures. I can see your successes. That's on your resume. How have you failed? How have you got yourself up? What would you do differently? How have you reflected on it?
Networking, relationship, being open to feedback, being open to learn. I always say as leaders, you want to demand, but have you shown? So if you want to be an empathetic leader, you have to be empathetic yourself. Do you build that culture within your small team? I'm very concerned sometimes when everyone wants the company to be something without realizing you are the company. So start showing those attributes. It pays. It's a slow and steady process. Show it yourself first. I'll tell you one thing I love about the company. I love the culture. It has one of the most amazing cultures to work with. I've been here 14 and a half years, and we actually have a culture code that has humility in it. We have a culture code that has relationships in it. We have a culture code that has results, result orientation. For me, that's extremely important that you actually implicitly state your culture so that people don't misunderstand it.
So I have a pretty strong opinion about this, and it's partly my personality, it's partly the companies I've worked with and for. I am such a huge advocate for honest, open conversation. I am such a huge advocate for the difficult conversation. As a leader, that is something that, like when I was tossed into leadership, that was my first lesson is, oh, I have to make the hard choices. Oh, okay. And so being able to have those open, honest conversations allows me to get all the information I need to make the hard decisions. It allows me to understand the problem better. It allows me, like, I hired the best people. I know that. So why wouldn't I seek those conversations and those dialogues to be able to make business decisions, make people decisions, whatever it might be. And I think what is so awful is people stress about the hard conversations, but the hard conversations themselves aren't that hard. Once you get in them, you're both humans, you're talking to each other. And another thing that people don't talk about often, but feedback goes all ways. It goes up, it goes down, and it goes sideways. So being able to have those conversations and being able to seek that honestly, at the end of the day, there should be a purpose of your organization or of your team or whatever it is. If you always bring the conversation back to serving that purpose, it's not like you did this, I disagree with you. It's like to serve our customers better, to serve our patients better, like whatever that is. What if we think about it this way? And you're just taking that person's emotional component out of it or ego out of it goes so far in actually getting to a solution and being solution focused in these hard conversations.
So I love what you said, and I will not disagree at all. My other addition to that is, and I was brought up on this, don't blame the person, blame the process. Mm-hmm. Things go wrong, absolutely. But I kid you not, none of us get up in the morning saying, okay, today I'm going to screw up. Today I'm going to make a mistake. Never, ever happens, right? So to Lisa's point, take the emotion out of it. And as a person, I need to also take out the fact that I didn't do this purposefully. I didn't do this with intent to fail. Sometimes things go wrong. Accept that, understand that, and propagate that. Always, whenever I've given feedback, it's always been, tell me where the process failed. Tell me, how did the process stop working? Why did the process stop working? What could we have done better to make the process better? As an organization, failure is part of life. I mean, if you look at the moon launch, and if you look at the data around it, it failed more times than it succeeded. It succeeded just once in the amount of failure, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is, when something goes wrong, stand up and say, my apologies, it went wrong. Now let's get together as a team and work. For process, for some things that don't, when you stress is because you think you're all alone in the problem. Get out of it. Go and say, the process failed. I didn't catch it. I didn't catch it because this process failed, because sometimes we rely on a process so much, we stop thinking. And that's where AI comes in, right? So we are saying, let the AI do all the non-thinking jobs. Let us start doing the thinking jobs. And then say, okay, now as a team, what can we all do?